questions and problems are ones that I define for myself. And they're primarily drawing problems or problems with presentation. And I'm very careful to distinguish presentation from representation, because the drawings I make are not representations of anything, and they're not representational, but they certainly refer to things. And I like to think of them as primary presentations. And that's the difference between making a drawing and making an iconic drawing or a more symbolic drawing. But furthermore, they're not necessarily symbols either, because they're might be symbolic of something, but they really exist on their own. Take the women series, for instance. The problem is, how do I develop a new way of presenting the female form using my visual language? That's the problem. All the intermediate sketches and all the stages of developing the individual drawings are part of the solution. It's important to show all the work in order to prove the solution. And that's what I do with my drawings and my sketches. Therein lies the proof for the solution, making the solution irrefutable. And so that's what I mean when I'm searching for solutions. And they're all solutions for problems that I've just defined for myself. And I have a lot of problems. I make different bodies of work based on different themes or concepts or content. So I'll make what I refer to as the mindscape paintings, whereby the subject matter and the ingredients, those core elements or units of meaning, are based on more surreal or fantastic ideas that spring more from the mind than from the world around us, as opposed to another body of work that are based on women and figure drawings, which are based on observations of this world, primarily drawing figures and then having those drawings develop into more abstract presentations of those forms. And then there's another body of work, for example, that I call the black holes, which are these concentric fleur-de-lis or flourishes that fold in on themselves, and started out for me as symbols of luxury and symbols of fanciness, and I wanted to make the fanciest paintings that I possibly could, and so that's how the black holes started conceptually. And then there's a body of work I've done based on geometric primitives and a lot of African art. And so there are different bodies of works and different kind of concepts and different themes. More directly, I'm looking at Eastern European artists of like the 20s and 30s who were interested in simplifying forms simplifying the figure down to just essential and kind of core forms. Gerhard Arndt's, Augustin Schinkel are a couple I'm looking at whose work I absolutely admire, and whose work, along with their contemporaries, I feel spun off from official art history. And I feel that their work was so successful at solving this problem of visually communicating that its utility was recognized and co-opted by the state and co-opted by commerce. And so you saw this aesthetic pursuit of simplifying forms down to their essence being employed by and being used for signage and packaging, and again kind of being used or having a utility attached to the work because it was so successful at communicating, and communicating very efficiently. And so it's those artists that I'm really looking at more than Matisse or Picasso. So I'm looking at more of those artists, and then also designers from 20s, 30s onward. And then hopefully what I'm doing is bringing that discipline back into only an artistic pursuit. And I'm very careful not to have utility attached to the drawings that I make, and make sure that the work is protected and appreciated in its own right. All of the elements that you see in my paintings, which I refer to as elements, and I also refer to them as units of meaning, they all are original drawings that start with a thumbnail sketch. And so the sketch and the drawing process is developed in ink on paper until I get to a solution or a final form. And then I'll take that final form, I'll scan it, use it as a template in order to make a new digital, more technical drawing of the form that is as perfectly constructed as I can possibly make it. And what I mean by that is very few points, because I'm talking about creating vector drawings, which are made with points and the lines that connect the points, which is a big distinction between like a bitmap image, of course. Then I can make a piece of film, and then from the piece of film I make a screen, and then with the screen I use many different screens to make the paintings. And then I'll layer and paint the drawings and collage the drawings together onto canvases, and exploit as much as possible that process of painting, which for me is silk screening. I'm pushing paint through a screen, and I'm not really doing it in a way that is done in a way to reproduce something. So I'm not concerning myself with tight registration or even clean image production necessarily. I'm exploiting all the different things that you can do incorrectly in using silkscreen. So what that means is off-registering, maybe pulling images through just partly, layering images up so they're not perfectly aligned or registered, mixing paint on the screen, and you can see some of those bad moves in the details of the painting. And that's what I like to fully exploit as much as I can, because I believe it's the process of making a painting that should inform the final painting. That's a big question. Does it have to be intended for a popular audience? For me, it does. I don't want to be. I don't want to speak for everybody, but it's my intention, I guess, and it's my desire, and it's my goal, because I didn't grow up in an art environment, and my art experiences were based on going into, for example, a skateboard shop and looking at all the different oil on wood panels, which is still not unlike a gallery or a museum experience. It's the same materials. You're making aesthetic decisions, and you're valuing the different picture planes based on the artwork. And so it's always, I've always considered that's the same experience. It's the same thing. And also the idea of judging or valuing t-shirts, for example, based on the artwork is something I had done since I was young, because and not necessarily looking at the quality of the garment, but really just looking at the artwork on it, and that's what differentiated one brand from another. So it was placing a high value and a premium on aesthetics, and I think that's what has stuck with me, and that's why it's important for me to continue to make work on this broad cultural spectrum, because that was my artistic experience, and that was my aesthetic experience, and that was my introduction to art growing up. Because again, I didn't have access to proper museums or galleries. The closest proper museum was maybe 2 hours away, and it was a field trip. It was a big event to go there in school, but it was also an otherworldly experience. It wasn't part of an everyday life, but all these other things were, books and t-shirts and skateboards. So that's why it's important for me to continue to make those kinds of things and to address them with as much concern as I address making a painting. And that is to say that I will consider the forms of those things and the opportunities to artfully produce those things in the same way that I'll consider the form and the opportunity to artfully address a painting. So it's all the same to me. In my consideration, but that's not to say that I think a t-shirt is art or a skateboard is art, because again, you have the utility attached to those objects. But I think those utilitarian objects can be artfully addressed. And who knows, for someone it might be their portal into into an art world, or into, you know, it might be a portal to, you know, investigating something further. Yeah.